All right. Now let's go to the finance minister. A week after his apology, and this is what exactly he said. So, well, analyzing what actually lies before us when it comes to the recovery of the economy. Have we already recovered as is being postulated, or we can do better?
The domestic debt exchange program was a very successful program, achieving 95% participation. And on this note, I would like to appeal to the people of Ghana to forgive us. To forgive us. It is never the intention of any government to impose hardships on its people. It was a necessary, very important decision at the time that if we avoided it, our economy will not recover such as it has recovered today. But also to thank you, the people of Ghana, to thank you on behalf of the president for the sacrifices, for the efforts that you all have made in participating in the domestic debt exchange program that saved our economy. And so I thank you very much for that support you gave to the government.
The question then on our minds is, a week after, what do we look forward to? How do we structure and deal with this, the state of the economy? I'm just going through the Great Transformational Plan. That's the GTP, which officially is the first manifesto launched by any political movement or party. And already, when you look at the table of content, especially on the economy, the economic cluster 1.7, debt sustainability management, you seem, alongside Alan Kyerematen, seem to know what you want to do with debt management, etc.
Exactly. Because
and you juxtapose that with what the finance minister is saying.
Exactly. Because
what ultimately is your conclusion on what the rhetoric is?
That the finance minister's apology does not resolve the policy failure, the massive policy failure that has led us to where we are. And so it's rhetoric, and it's because of the elections. He has to say something for people to feel that they are remorseful for the damage they've caused the entire nation.
It's just an electoral talk?
It's electoral talk. So what do you do? Under Alan's macroeconomic framework, under the Great Transformational Plan, there are clear things that we will do. And like you said, the first of all, above all, even though it's not written in the Great Transformational Plan, you need a change of leadership, confidence. People have lost confidence in the politics of the country, the political leadership they've been offered. And it's not just the MPP political leadership. They've lost confidence in Eduji's leader as well, because he's been there before for several years. And he's also a pupil of the IMF. He doesn't bring anything different from what the IMF will tell him to do. And Bawumia, who the MPP are seeking to impose on us, according to Brian Champong, is worse. Because Bawumia has utterly failed to manage this economy based on the expectation this nation had in him. So you are looking at confidence, restoring confidence by changing the leadership for a proven person who has a plan already, who by himself, with two huge parties, 3 months to elections, 4 months to elections, they are unable to produce anything. So Alan says, first, the confidence. Second, you need to stabilize the economy. So you stabilize the economy by making sure that you have debt sustainability management. You don't continue to dig the hole that you are sitting in. Cut down the size of your government immediately. Cut down your expenditures. Rationalize your central management machinery. He has promised to run the country with 40 ministers, and he has stated who they will be.
Alan Kyerematen.
Yes, he has already stated it, who they will be, which ministers, which ministries will be kept. Public expenditure. He is saying he is going to ban sole sourcing immediately, because that is where 95% of the corruption is going on. Where a private person who is a procurement person for the government will buy things for their own household at 5 cedis, they will buy for the government at 25 cedis. What's the difference? The difference is that you can get away with it. So, sole sourcing, when everything is sole source for very flimsy reasons. But you need to go beyond stability. You need to grow and grow properly. You don't need the growth that you get by cutting back on expenditure in social services, which is what the finance ministry is doing. You need growth that transforms. So we are going to build capital. That is why you have low competitive interest rates and financing charges. Now, what do you mean by low competitive interest rates and financing charges is that Alan says we will bring the Ghana policy rate progressively down to single digits in a period of 3 years, so that borrowing, the cost of doing business, will become attractive. Look, Ronald, let's ask ourselves, why are interest rates at 30%?
You tell me.
Because the government and the Bank of Ghana is implementing an outmoded inflation targeting strategy. Because they assume that there is inflation, excess money chasing goods, and that's why prices are going up. But that's not the case. There's a deficit in supply. That's the problem we have. So to meet supply, how many people can borrow at 33% to produce? Nobody. Because if you borrow at 33%, you can't compete with the Chinese product where they borrowed at 3%. And there are Chinese companies in this country who borrow at 3% in China to come and invest in Ghana. So how does a Ghanaian entrepreneur compete with such an enterprise when he goes to his own indigenous bank and the bank tells him that I'll give you money at 33% because the Bank of Ghana is giving it to me at 30%? Why? It doesn't work that way. So Alan is saying that we'll reduce the interest rates generally. More importantly, we'll also establish a traders bank where the 80% of the people who are in informal sector, whose monies were lost in the botched banking crisis cleanup, whose monies were consumed by the rapid increase in money, financial money-making houses, which were ill-regulated, and then they were all collapsed. They will now have their own traders bank. And the traders bank will lend at interest rates that traders can engage in and make a profit on, because it will be their own money. The SUSU schemes and all those informal schemes will be formalized in their bank. So Alan is talking about competitive interest rates, as well as maintaining a close eye on the fixing of rates by banks, charges by banks. Alan is talking about increasing financing for SMEs. And when you increase financing for SMEs, what happens? They make money. So he says, direct banks to allocate the equivalent of a minimum of 10% of profit after tax. That's the previous year's profit after tax. To the provision of new collateral-free concessionary lending to targeted SMEs engaged in import substitution. So you are actually going to encourage.
So what you're saying is that you don't buy into the finance minister's...
He is apologizing, but he doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a plan to transform.
The finance minister is apologizing, but doesn't have a plan.
He doesn't have a plan. It's the plan I'm now talking about. How do you stabilize? How do you build capital? So another one is reforms in cocoa sector financing. We are going to privatize heavily in the cocoa sector. And we are going to make sure that we won't go and borrow money abroad to come and buy a product locally in cities and change the money back into dollars on the local market, which would then have depreciated, which means that we are losing money all the time. So why can't we buy cocoa in cities and sell in foreign currency and make all the foreign currency as money? Then, to conclude on this, we are going to deepen capital markets and financial intermediation. We are going to tackle the overhang in the SOE sector. Alan is saying that we will recapitalize all existing viable SOEs by offloading 40% of their capital on the local capital stock exchange. Then we will build a sovereign fund, bring in all the funds that are in Ghana, build a sovereign wealth fund, which will use to leverage private sector investments in strategic anchor industries, 10 of which industries we have provided in the GTP. So the GTP contains the plan that will give people, young people, entrepreneurs, Ghanaians hope. The GTP doesn't talk about winning elections at all costs. It talks about offering you choices that you can appreciate, that these choices will make a difference when you implement them. The GTP talks about policy. Policy is the cheapest thing a government can make. Policy is the basis of governance. Policy doesn't have to be based on borrowing money from the IMF. Policy doesn't mean borrow money from the World Bank before you can think. Policy.
So what's your point? You can have a good policy, implementation will be a problem.
You must develop the policy. What you
F4.
must do is develop the policy.
I'm saying Alan was in charge of 1D1F.
And it was seriously undermined. Because the people
who undermined it? But
the very government he developed 1D1F for. How much money was given to 1D1F in 2017?
I'll come back on. Eduji, at the end of the day, the finance minister has apologized and says that Well, we've achieved, you look at domestic debt exchange, everything is fine. So for Akufo is complaining, the former CJ, that her friends, her kind, as well as other investors have lost a lot of money. But the finance minister says there's a lot of hope ahead. 3-4 months to the election. We should take that hook, line, and sinker, shouldn't we?
A quick one. My senior talks about Mr. Alan Kyerematen coming out with something new. I disagree respectfully with him. On the 1st of July 2022, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo announced that we're going to the IMF. In announcing this, my learned senior Alan Kyerematen Kwadwo was a minister of trade and in fact indicated that the IMF conversation was good to stabilize the economy. Mr. Alan Kyerematen is the product of the IMF. His workings with the World Bank, Empretec, and the rest. He is a product of the IMF, the Bretton Woods institution.
What's your point?
Why are you creating an impression that Alan... In fact, his relationship with the Bretton Woods institution is well documented. Having worked with Empretec. So please, the whole part. What are we talking about? So please, on that score, you are not offering anything new. But let's come to the substantive matter. Look, you have a situation where unbridled borrowing, actuated by personal gain, the desire to profit from borrowing, whereupon, within the space of 5 years, the Akufo-Addo Bawumia Kenneth-Ofori-Atta economic whatever took $13 billion bonds only. 2.25 billion Franklin Templeton, 11 billion from the Eurobond. Never seen in our history. At the time when they were doing this borrowing, the finance minister's own company was advising him and profiting by way of commission from the borrowing. Now we came to a point where this unbridled borrowing, we could no longer service how much we borrowed. So the government decided to undertake what they called domestic debt exchange program. Now, this is the most painful part. By reason of this domestic debt exchange program, bondholders,
The DDEP.
persons who had government securities, lost 61 billion Ghana cedis of their principal and interest payment. Persons who have lived their life and decided, and I know senior lawyers who said, look, because the law works, there's nothing like SNIT and all of those things, unless you do it on your own. They decided to buy government bonds and other securities with a view that when things are difficult for them, they can fall on those things. They woke up one morning and government says, we are doing a DDEP. We do not have the capacity to repay what we have borrowed. By reason of this, Ghanaian bondholders, pensioner bondholders, persons with government securities, lost 61 billion. That is the cost. 61 billion. And you wake up one morning and you see your finance minister say, we are sorry. Do you know the number of people who died? I have listened to Karma, Dr. Michael Addo, Karma Conference, the owner, in a recent speech say that many of his colleagues who bought government bonds have left and joined the church triumphant. I mean, they are dead. How is the insincere apology of Dr. Amin Anta going to revive? This is a Dr. Amin Anta who I recall vividly. When this parliament passed this LGBTQ law, he was all over the place saying that by reason of the passage, the president should not assent. And that if the president assents, we're going to have problem with the economy. right? You remember that speech?
Yes.
You know he's a Muslim. And the Quran forbids what he was encouraging. You know that.
He said we're going to not get remittances, but also inflows from
Can you imagine
multilaterals and
meanwhile, this same man had to go to Parliament for the passage of laws, among other things, as we speak. The problem or the thing that took us to DDEP, he's still doing it.
How so?
The unbridled borrowing. As we speak, Amin Anta as finance minister. In fact, Parliament is being recalled, I think the 3rd of September, to come and approve more loans. So the man says he's apologizing for, listen to his words. So he said the DDEP was a success. At the same time, he's apologizing for what he described to be successful.
Say that again.
Listen carefully. The speech, the video you just played. The man says that this government undertook the domestic debt exchange program and it was hugely successful. At the time you are apologizing to people, you are telling them that what has inflicted the pain was a success. I don't understand. That is why I am telling you that. And remember that he made this speech 2 days after Kenneth Japon has said that it's important that the MPP begins to apologize to Ghanaians. Immediately he decides to gaslight Ghanaians by then apologizing to... But you see, the very thing that took us to the IMF, have you stopped it? What are your policy options? What are you doing to turn the economy around beyond the borrowing?
You haven't heard Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia say the credit scoring system and a number of initiatives.
I have said on this platform that already there are credit scoring in this country. As we speak, there's credit scoring in this country. MTN, for instance, can give you a mobile phone where you pay in bits. They do. It's nothing innovative. But is that the problem of the Ghanaian economy? Young people are looking for jobs. The person needs job to build his credit worthiness. It is on the basis of income, available flow, that he begins to build a credit score. The person doesn't have a job. As we speak, the region with the highest unemployment rate is Northeast, where Dr. Bawumia comes from. Farmers in Northeast are simply asking for a watermelon factory in order to process their watermelon, get additional income, and buy their own mobile phone. You do not have solution to building that factory for them after 4 years, after 5 years. And you are telling them that you'll be giving them mobile phone for them to pay 1 cedi, 1 cedi, 1 cedi. What is important? The NDC is saying, from all indicators, women grow the economy. So if you have a women development bank, it empowers them. That's one. If you have a policy program like the 24-hour economy policy program, it is going to create the necessary catalyst for economic growth. We also believe that if you look at persons who import items in this country, the biggest thing is that they import inflation into this economy. So why not give them a fixed rate within the period for the purposes of planning, among other things? For me, I believe that this is what is required to serve as the catalyst to grow the Ghanaian economy.
Not every year.
Not the rhetoric and insincere apology.
Yeah. Was it yesterday? I saw you at the women's launch, and is it that campaign in the Ashanti region for the party? What really are the sentiments within the party in terms of the MPP, especially its hub Ashanti, about the state of the economy and what type of messaging and then the policy options that need to be communicated to not only the base of the party, but also the wider voter public, so that there's acceptance of whether it's an apology or how all these difficulties have been dealt with? What do you think is the sentiment?
Thank you very much. The sentiment yesterday, I was with Evans, was the party inauguration of the various committees. And as you go to these parties gatherings, you see them dancing and the euphoria. But I think the vice presidential candidate was also in there. A lot of dignitaries came. The issue is how the party will tend to communicate their achievements to the people of Ghana. At the same time, to also the vulnerable people as the concern of the people of this country goes. Because as the economy is being so hard in terms of living expenses, that is the living cost, the standard of living. At the same time, you look at the food prices, you also look at the debt issue that has brought all these things. The concern of the party is how these things can be explained or can be justified for the party to convince voters to accept the new leader that the party wants to make it lead the country. And that is what was going on.
Okay.
And you really testify that it's something that the party wants to work on that.
Okay. So I asked the question. You didn't answer the question. So the question again is...
Yes.
So let me rephrase. Perhaps maybe you didn't get the question. So the question I asked was,
okay.
Because I know you're very close to the base of the party, the MPP, I'm asking you the question, such line or content of communication by the finance minister, for example, how does that resonate with the base of the party in relation to the difficulties that the economy is having and how that also influences their living standards? That's a question.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, when you go to it's a stronghold of the party, and there's a lot of concerns about how some issues that have been popping up in the stronghold, and the minister coming in for the apology. You know, the minister apology was centered on people that at least the debt issue, those that we have been taking, that is a domestic debt, that's the people that have been affected. So you see that the apology centered on that area. And you know, before that, as we discussed last time, you know, the former, that is the MP for Honorable Party, was also saying certain things about how the party need to apologize or try to accept certain responsibilities and let the people of the country to know that this is an area that it made a mistake and tend to apologize. So now that is what is the feeling that the people want to see, that even if there are mistakes, let the party make voters know that this is what happened, and they will tend to make the adjustment. And you know, it's something that is the concern of the party, and they are looking at it very well for the whole region.
Okay, so that is what is being done. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just give you a minute for you to wrap up on it. Just 1 minute.
Attack on Alan Kyerematen as being part of the system that demonstrates that we are not looking at individuals who have the capacity to lead this country. He has positioned the debate very squarely. And when it comes to individuals, of the three at the moment who are certain and clear to stand, John Mahama, Alan is miles ahead of any of them in terms of economic creativity, in terms of policy creativity. None of them can stand up to Alan's capacity to dream policy, create policy, and implement policy that provides dividends.
But Alan was the one who implemented 1D1F.
Yes, and I'm telling you, he created 1D1F way back in Kufuor's era and brought it forward and updated it for the MPP. Yet what happened? Because of policy jealousy, because of succession jealousy, when they got into government, 1D1F was not properly funded.
Wait,
it was not funded.
Are you saying that people were jealous of Alan Kyerematen's prowess
to
be able to manage 1D1F?
There's always been a fear.
So he was sabotaged?
If the plan is not given budgetary resources, what else would you call it?
So who was implementing 1D1F then?
And worse of all, and there was an attempt to take away the concept from the trade ministry and establish some amorphous secretariat. So it even took time for it to take off. But in spite of all that, he managed to push it forward. And we have a difference. Now, if we can anchor 1,000 1D, 1Fs. This is a country that will make a difference. Finally, my 15 seconds. Alan has been bold enough. And when the government was stuck, he was the one who was able to tell the government, let's go to the IMF, and came up to government to explain. So he was doing it on behalf of the government, which was already stuck. It is not, and Alan will never be afraid.
For the government of Nana.
He advised them. He advised them because they had.
When did he advise them? Earlier or late?
At the point when the government had been bragging that they would never go to the IMF. You remember?
So he advised them late.
No, he advised them. Yeah,
because at the time,
the government was in charge.
etc., we were already late.
Yeah, they were in charge.
Did he advise them earlier?
Alan told the finance minister that where you are sitting now, with your debts to GDP at 105%, which means if you give all your money to debt servicing, all your GDP to debt servicing, you won't get anything. You will still be short of 5%. He advised the finance minister, go to the IMF, and they did. Now it is just for stabilization. He has a plan for post-stabilization. He has a plan for growth.
Energy, 1 minute.
He has a plan to make a difference.
Be within 1 minute.
1 minute.
So that I can read some comments.
No, I mean 1 minute. You see, I say that the claim by the finance minister is so insincere because you see, if you listen throughout his statement, the government doesn't take responsibility for the mess. They are either blaming COVID Ukraine, they are either blaming DDEP. They don't take responsibility that the unbridled borrowing is what took us there. You need to personally take responsibility to demonstrate.
The finance minister is apologizing. What else do you want?
Where is Bawumia in the conversation? He is the chair of the economic management team. How come that he's not speaking? How come that he's not taking personal responsibility and policy failure? I want to conclude on this. My senior brother makes the point about Alan. You remember the presidential special initiatives? It was a fiasco, regrettably. He may be well-intentioned, but it didn't work. That for me is...
PSI
did not work.
It failed.
How did it fail?
Terribly.
Have you interrogated the government sector?
But you know, I will not. I will just say this.
Dr. Free, a minute on this.
It requires personal responsibility on the part of Dr. Bawumia.
So you say everybody should take responsibility.
Everybody should take responsibility.
Dr. Free, let me not take the win out of it. 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute.
Strategic anchor industries as we speak.
Roland, what I would like to say is that the government about the debts, what we want to suggest is that because we've learned that they want to come up with a treasury bill of about 78 billion cedis to finance some of the...
I don't understand. We're buying more debt, 78 billion?
Yes, treasury bill. And that is where we are having an issue because if the debt has led us to this stage and you have apologized, why now increasing the debt? And no, some of the debts, the treasury bill bonds that they want to come up with, some of them is going to be used for paying some of the bond holders and also used for other parts. So, Roland, what we want to say is that let's manage our debts, and also to ensure that we tend to avoid some of these situations of going to the IMF.
A fantastic conclusion there from Dr. Samuel Afriyie, just appearing on this show live from the Ashanti regional capital of Kumasi. Great man, always contributing to national discourse pleasantly. Thank you very much, Dr. Afriyie. Also, right here, a former member of parliament for Adentan, currently with Alan's Movement for Change. They also have an alliance going into the general election, presidential and parliamentary election for Ghana 2024. Yao Boabinga Samwa, thank you for joining us this morning. And then also, Lawyer Edudzi Tamaklo, thank you for joining us as well.
I'm inviting you once again to UPSA to come and listen to the experience.
Alfred
Affable John Dramani.
Alfred Kojo Trido says,
I wish you well.
Our beloved country, Ghana, grapples with challenges of poverty, inequality, and infrastructure development. Ghana's future depends on the leadership of John Mahama. And then Master Planner Junior Kentampo brought a message in Time and says, I really admire Honorable Edudzi on how he makes his submission. My only worry is the propaganda aspect. He can do propaganda power. Chris Ashaliboche says the next election is going to be between Ghanaians and the failed MPP, not the MPP versus NDC. So Brian Achampong can continue to tickle himself and be laughing. The victims of Ayawaso West Wogo and their families are patiently waiting. That will be remembered. And, well, Osai Boateng from Kumasi says, we know where we are because the MPP has invested heavily. Just go around the country and you will see. TV3, focus on what has been done by government too. Elliot Wogbe, right. I emphatically address our biased opinion leaders and the so-called IGP. If they will sit in this country and allow the likes of Brian Achampong to make such treacherous statements like the MPP is going to win, etc., then they should not dare to invite any NDC member, well-meaning Ghanaian, for speaking their mind when they make same utterances. Hello, Rugbe. Well, we have a number of comments also coming from Andy, as well as a couple of you as well. Let's do Dewa. Sampi Ali also sent a message. Sorry. Abigail Dakum.
Sampi Ali sent a message.
Yes. Abigail Dakum of the Ghana National Association of Teachers, the Gomua District. Good morning. Thank you for always watching the show. We're grateful. Lydia Nyaba, also with the Central Region Office of NAT as well, always watching us.